Hello, in this question we are told Neema did Y tests and scored a total of 120 marks. She did 2 more tests which she scored 13 and 14 marks. The mean score of the first Y test was 3 marks more than the mean score for all the tests she did. Then we are told find the total number of tests that she did. Okay, so we have like a before case and then an afterwards case, or rather for all the tests, right? So let's start working through the solution. So I'm going to say we have an initial case. So we have initially and then we have afterwards. Afterwards, or just basically this is for all the tests, right? Okay. So initially, she did how many number of tests? She did Y tests. So we are going to say number of tests would be Y. And then she scored a total of 120 marks. This is initially. So total marks would be 120. Now let's look at the afterwards case, or rather for all the tests. So we are told she did 2 more tests. So let's start with the number of tests. So number of tests. In this case, that would be the initial number of tests, which was Y, plus the 2 more that she did. So that would be Y plus 2. Now let's talk about the total marks. So the total marks would be the initial total marks, which was 120, then plus the new marks. So that's going to be 13 and then plus 14. So I'd use my calculator here. So we do 120 plus 13, then plus 14, and that's going to give us 147. Okay, next we are told, sorry, the mean score of the first Y test was 3 marks more than the mean score for all the tests that she did. So this means that we need some relationship for the mean scores. So initially, what was the mean score? So we are going to say the initial mean score. How do you get the mean score? You do the total marks over the number of tests. So we do 120 over the number of tests, which is Y. We do the same for all the tests. So the mean score would be the total marks 147 over the number of tests, which was Y plus 2. Okay, so let's read that part again. We are told the mean score of the first Y test was 3 marks more than the mean score for all the tests. So this means that if I take this first mean score, 120 over Y, and I minus 3 since it was more, I should be able to get the new mean score, which is 147 over Y plus 2. So this is our equation. And then the question finally tells us to find the total number of tests that she did. So the total number of tests that she did would be this one right here, Y plus 2. So we are going to solve our equation, and finally we should be able to find the value of Y plus 2. Okay, so let's start solving this. So in our equation, we have this denominator here, we have the Y, and then we have this other one here of Y plus 2. We need to get rid of those. So let's start with the Y. To get rid of it, we just multiply each term by Y. So we are going to say times Y, then times Y, times Y. So for the first term by Y, this is 1, by Y, this is 1. So we remain with 120. Negative 3 times Y would give us negative 3Y is equals to then 147 times y would give us 147y over, then we have y plus 2. Okay, now let's get rid of the y plus 2 denominator. So again, we multiply each term by y plus 2. So we say times y plus 2 times y plus 2, then finally times y plus 2. So for the first term, we have 120 into brackets y plus 2. Then we have minus 3y into brackets y plus 2. And all this is equals to, so on the right, we just do by y plus 2, this is 1, by y plus 2, this is 1. So we are left with 147y. So at this point, we are going to expand these expressions, and we're also going to bring this 147 over to the left side. So let's start expanding. So 120 times y will give us 120y, then 120 by 2 would give us plus 240. Negative 3y times y would give us negative 3y squared. Negative 3y times 2 would give us negative 6y. And we are saying all this is equals to, oh, oops, actually let's just bring over the 147. So when the 147 comes to the left, it becomes negative. So minus 147y, and this is all equals to now 0, since nothing is left on the right. Okay, now let's collect the like terms together. So here we have 120y, we have minus 6y, then we have minus 147y. So 120y minus 6y minus 147y, then you have plus the 240, and finally you have minus 3y squared, and this is all equals to 0. So let's do 120 minus 6, then minus 147. That's going to give us negative 33y plus 240 minus 3y squared is equals to 0. Now this is a quadratic equation, and remember the standard form of a quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c is equals to 0, where a, b, and c are constants, right? So the x is literally just any variable. In our case, the x corresponds to y, right? So let's rewrite our equation in that format. So this becomes negative 3y squared, then minus 33y, then plus 240, and we are saying this is equals to 0. Okay, so now you need to notice that here all these terms are divisible by negative 3, right? So we have negative 3 here. Negative 33 is still divisible by negative 3, and 240 is also divisible by negative 3. So we are going to divide through by negative 3. So this is going to be divided by negative 3, divide by negative 3, divide by negative 3, divide by negative 3. So by negative 3, 1 by negative 3, we are left with y squared there. So y squared by negative 3, 1 by negative 3. We're only left with y, since this is like negative 33y divided by negative 3. Oh, oops, actually not y. We are left with 11y. So this becomes plus 11y. And then by negative 3, 1 by negative 3, that's going to be negative 80. So minus 80 is equals to 0, since 0 divided by anything is 0. Okay, so now we have this quadratic equation, and there are many methods to solve it. Let's use completing the square method today. So to complete the square, we need to find this certain term that we are going to add and subtract from this equation, right? And the term is usually you take this coefficient of y or x, whichever, you divide it by 2, then you square the result. So whatever you get is what you're going to use to complete the square. So let's first compute that term. So that term will be, we've said you take the coefficient of y, which is 11, you divide it by 2, and then you square the result. So this is the term we are going to add and subtract from our equation, and it will help us complete the square. Also, note that to complete the square, the coefficient of y here needs to be 1. So in our case, it's already 1, so we don't need to worry about that. Okay, so now we have y squared plus the 11y, and now what we are going to do is we are going to add this term. So we are going to say plus 11 out of 2 squared, then we subtract that same term, minus 11 out of 2 squared, and then now we have the negative 80. Minus 80 is equals to 0. Sorry. So now you see the net change to our equation is 0 since we have added and subtracted that same term. But what has changed is that you see these first 3 terms, they now form a perfect square, a complete square. This is why the method is called completing the square method. So these first 3 terms now collapse to y, then plus this term here, the term being squared. So now this becomes y plus 11 out of 2 squared. And in fact, you can confirm if you expand this, if you expand y plus 11 out of 2 squared, you should be able to get the first 3 terms there. Okay, then we have, minus 11 out of 2 squared minus 80 is equals to 0. So this is y plus 11 out of 2 squared. Let me just use my calculator for this. So we are saying the negative of 11 divided by 2 squared minus 80. So that's going to be minus 110.25 is equals to 0. Okay, so let's take this negative 110.25, take it to the right side. So what does that give us? So on the left, we have y plus 11 out of 2 is just 5.5. So 5.5 squared is equals to, when the negative 110.25 goes to the right, it becomes positive. So we have 110.25. Then we have this square right here. So to get rid of it, we just find the square root of both sides. So I want you to find that square root and then find this other square root. So when you find the square root of the square of something, you are left with whatever you're squaring. So on the left, we'll have y plus 5.5 equals to, now we find the square root of 110.25. But remember, the square root of anything, or rather the square root of a number, is usually plus or minus. So this means we have plus or minus there. And then now let's find the square root of 110.25. That's going to be 10.5. To find the value of y, let's take this 5.5 to the right. Okay. So on the left, we have y is equals to, when the 5.5 goes to the right, it becomes negative. So negative 5.5 plus or minus 10.5. So this means that either y is equals to negative 5.5 plus 10.5, or y is equals to negative 5.5 minus 10.5. So y is equals to, then I'm going to do negative 5.5 plus 10.5. That's going to be 5, or y is equals to, then I will do negative 5.5 minus 10.5, which is negative 16. Okay, let's scroll upwards a bit back to the question. What was our y? Our y was the number of tests, right? The number of tests cannot be negative. So we write number of tests cannot be negative. Therefore, the value of y is 5. Again, let's go back to the question. What were we to find? The question was asking us to find the total number of tests that she did. And in our case, the total number of tests is equivalent to y plus 2. So we scroll. So total number of tests will be the value of y plus 2. And this is 5 plus 2, which gives us 7. So 7 is the answer to this question. Yeah. So those are the total number of tests. I hope you learned something, and as always, thanks for watching.